to live stream the meeting. Setting up your meeting for customer service. Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session of Behshad. Darvish. It's very similar to the Arabic word Darvish, but he's from Iran, so you see the cultural differences. This is Behshad. We're very happy to have him here. He is the business partner for Dell EMC, and he's also the person responsible for, one second, I think there is, I'm muting myself from, okay. Okay, so we're back. Behshad is the business partner for Dell EMC, and he is the HR business support for Dell Technology throughout MENA, the Middle East, Russia, Africa, Turkey. And he has brilliant experience in high-tech technology-like companies, and he's the one who did the entire integration when Dell acquired EMC, and we're very lucky to have him with us today. Hi, Behshad.
Hi, Nala. Thanks so much for the introduction. Pleasure to be here.
I'll leave the stage to you, and we'll be here. Make sure to post your questions, and yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Really pleased to have been able to be part of the session today. I've been attending a few of them since the morning and really been enjoying it. For some of you who may have caught Anya Munrad, she's a colleague, supports a different geography, but hopefully I'll provide you with some different insight to what Anya has shared. Let me share my screen as well, just so that you've got that. All right, excellent. So really pleased to be speaking about this topic of the brave new workplace. And for those of you who did attend Anya's session, there'll be a number of topics that I think will overlap, but I'm going to focus a little bit more around what Dell Technologies has done as it relates to our internal team members, how this whole new pandemic has created, really been a catalyst to movements that have been in place already, in particular around the way we work, remote work. And I'll share some of our best practices with you. Fully appreciate that, that Dell is a large multinational. A lot of the audience members are going to be entrepreneurs, with smaller businesses or aspiring business leaders. But I think a lot of these principles are still going to resonate with you as best practices and help you in your decision making as well, whether you're going to be on the employer side or going to be on the employee side as well. I think we've got about half an hour, so I'll try to share the content and then open up to see if there's any questions that, that I can answer as well. So let's start. And this is an image that I think a lot of us have seen and saw a few months ago. We all lived it. And we were just speaking with Nala just before the session started around her experience in the Rome airport and never seeing it that quiet before. And you can see that in a lot of the parts of the world, especially in these big cities, Paris being on the left-hand side, and obviously we've got the Taj Mahal on the right. It was a world of difference that we lived in for a few weeks, in some cases a couple of months, Now, a number of regions are going back into more restricted movement or lockdowns. So the reason I bring this up was really just to show the impact in a visual way of the impact that some of these restrictions have had on us, and draw a parallel between what happens in society, in our cities, on the streets, and within our workplaces as well. So let's set the scene a little bit. I think hopefully many of you will recognize this gentleman in the photo. Probably one of the viral videos, most viral videos as it related to working from home, and at least probably the original one, since there's been quite a few more in this era of Zoom. But as I mentioned, I think one of the most significant impacts that we've had, especially on knowledge workers, it has been this experiment that we've lived through around working remotely or working from home within this year of 2020. That's not to say that this is something new. So flexible or remote working has been around for a few decades now, actually. I think it has its roots even as far back as the OPEC crisis in the 1970s, where because of the cost of petrol being so high, a lot of employees looked to try to save money by doing work remotely. And obviously, since then, technology has really taken it to the next level. So with increased personal technology that we have, mobile phones, digital connectivity, broadband speeds, we're able to do a lot of the work that we traditionally have thought we've needed to have the infrastructure of an office for remotely, or not tied to a specific location at least. So I want to highlight that this particularly applies to what we call knowledge workers. So I'll give you an example of Dell Technologies. We have, probably a little over 140,000 employees globally, and a good portion of those will be employees that work in manufacturing settings or customer support, where they support our customers on site at their data centers. Those type of roles, there would generally need to be a presence in a particular place. But what I'm referring to is typically what we would think of as like the work that can be done at an office and has traditionally been done at an office. So the reason that this has become so popular, even before the COVID crisis, is that research has actually demonstrated productivity and performance benefits. And some studies in particular have compared employees who went through a cycle of not having a choice around where they work, so presumably in an office place, then being moved to working remotely, primarily working from home, and then having the choice around what model or where they want to work, whether they want to remain at home, go back to the office, and engagement level and productivity was measured in these studies. And that impact was seen to be around 13 to 22%. So pretty significant in terms of the impact that it can make. And the most engaged group within that population was actually those people who had the choice. So when they were given the choice, they were most happy. In fact, the lowest engagement out of all those scenarios is the situation that we were in a few months ago, which is not having the choice at all. So when you're forced to work in a particular place, and as many of you know, working from home has its own challenges, especially when you're juggling a family or a living space that you're sharing with others, infrastructure challenges in some places. So it's not all rosy. But I'll share with you the Dell Technologies approach. And when the pandemic hit, as those of you who attended Anya's session would know, we really had to make quick decisions, pivot on a dime, so to speak, to change our work environment so that our employee population would be able to work remotely without issue. What we didn't want to do is sacrifice what we refer to as our people philosophy, but these are really the values that we have as an organization for our team members, the people who are part of Dell. So that remains a central part of our workforce strategy. The fundamental piece here is that work is going to be seen as an outcome and not as a place or a time. So those days, I think, are going to be slowly behind us, that you identify work as an office place or identify office hours as, you know, being 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever it traditionally has been. Again, all of these things have been around for a couple of decades, really, but this whole pandemic proved to be a big experiment for all of us that has really acted as a catalyst to show that, hey, we can actually do this on a wide scale and productivity isn't impacted. For Dell, our results, as Anya shared, have been fantastic since the beginning of our fiscal year, since the beginning of 2020. You know, that has a number of different reasons, but it could have also been catastrophic if we wouldn't have been able to have our team members working in a way that's productive. So what does this mean for us? It's being flexible and untethered. So you have the ability to be flexible in terms of the hours for many jobs, in terms of where you are, and you have the tools and technology and the support to be able to do what's expected in your role and make the most of that experience. And it's not to say that spaces for in-person and virtual collaboration aren't needed. So especially the in-person piece, I think it would be naive of us to assume that we don't have a significant impact when we build relationships in person. We're human after all, so this is ingrained as part of our DNA to be social and to have interactions. Even those of us who are more introverted, there's an element there of connection that's important and communication. And the last piece is really working whenever and wherever you're most productive. Hey, it could even be in space if you'd like to go there. So want to give you a picture around where this comes from, just quickly touching on this for Dell. So this whole concept around flexibility being an option, as it was before, to really being a strategy that we're following as an organization. You can see prior to 2009, most of our team members were office-based. So you could request, maybe if you had a specific need or specific challenge, to be able to work from home, maybe a couple times a week. Maybe some people worked remotely where we didn't have offices, but that was really not, it was on an ad hoc basis, one-to-one basis. And as you can see over the years, Dell as a company has really embraced flexibility to the point where, you know, we were even around 60% pre-COVID-19. And when the pandemic hit, we had 130,000 people working remotely effectively within a 10-day time period, which is pretty remarkable if you think about it, and really just goes to show the power of the technology that we've got as a society and the power of the infrastructure that we have as well. And this is not to say that this is just Dell. So we are certainly passionate about it. It combines well with the technology that we sell to our customers and our partners. But certainly, I'm sure many of you have seen Facebook, Twitter, Google. A lot of them have embraced remote working for large portions of their organizations as well. And as we enter the post-COVID world, I think this is where it starts to really get interesting, because it becomes a decision as opposed to it being a need necessarily. Like, we've been reactive now and out of necessity have had to work remotely. But as we enter, hopefully over the coming months, more of a norm, so to speak, or at least having fewer restrictions than we have in the last few months, this is where that flexibility as a strategy really comes to shine. And we're looking to lead with virtual as an organization. So there's an article that came out from the time actually that I was contacted to present on how Dell Technologies is managing this and maybe sharing some best practice around how the workplace is changing, there's a brilliant article, which I'll show you the link shortly, that has been in the Harvard Business Review, which really gives a great picture around this concept of, as they put it, working from anywhere impact. So that's the freedom to really work anywhere that you like. And we'll go through some of the pros and cons, just so that you've got a picture around what are some of the benefits and what are some of the potential pitfalls. As entrepreneurs, some of you are probably going to be in the position where you're going to have to make decisions around how you manage a team, the distribution of the team across geographies. Do you invest in having dedicated office space? I think de facto, many of us gravitated toward that being a necessity. So hopefully what I'll present to you is a picture of whether that's really the best use of resources, or can you think about how to optimize that money in other ways and still maintain that same productivity and growth that you're looking for your businesses. And if you're on the employee side and looking to work for an organization, there's definitely a lot of benefit here as well. So I'll walk you through some of these benefits and some of these potential areas of concern. First one really being the obvious one, which is the freedom to work anywhere. And I think you may have seen, there was a video that went viral for Dubai a few weeks ago around Dubai promoting itself being a place for digital nomads. In the ad, it says, if you can work from anywhere, why not work from here? Which was, it was a pretty clever, quick viral video that went around. But there's a number of different places that have really led with being a hotspot or an attractive location for so-called digital nomads who can work from anywhere. And it's really a way to stimulate their economy as some of these travel restrictions have reduced. So this has the added benefit of potentially getting around some immigration obstacles that are often in place. Many people know the US currently has introduced some legislation that's made it somewhat challenging for foreign workers to access the work environment in the US. But this whole concept of being able to work from anywhere helps get around that. There's also some really interesting research that's been done around the impact that working from anywhere has had on women who are from cultural backgrounds where perhaps it's been taboo to work remotely or to access places that they, there's sort of a cultural norm against it. Possibly also seen as abandoning their perceived domestic responsibilities that they might have. Great benefits there in some studies that were done specifically in Bangladesh. The next piece is really around the flexibility to manage your own schedule. So we all have lives outside of work, and sometimes those schedules don't quite align well. So if you think about work as really being an outcome as opposed to being a certain time, then it's enables you to be able to do all sorts of things, support your family in different ways, run errands. There's a lot of practical things that come outside of the regular working hours. And as long as you're meeting your outcomes for your job, then what's the issue? Next is around productivity. I already talked a little bit about that, but the research certainly is supportive in most work environments that there's a positive correlation there in terms of flexible working and productivity for the business. I know it's haram, sorry, it's a piggy bank. It's take it as a symbol of savings, but this is also a savings for us if we're working remotely. Many organizations will provide some sort of benefit to be able to work remotely. And from a cost of living perspective, those of you who have been based in large cities know that there is definitely a cost that's associated with being in a place with a large populace. So being based in Dubai, for example, over the last 8 years, cost of living here isn't easy to manage all the time for a lot of people. So if you can still do your role but work remotely and live in conditions that is preferable to you, then that's positive as well. So cost of living savings. From a company perspective as well, there's obviously a clear benefit in that money that would have been spent typically on real estate and paying rent or lease can be put towards innovation, to hiring more people, all sorts of areas where it could be beneficial. And you have generally happier people. So with that flexibility generally comes higher employee engagement and productivity. The other piece here is around access to a global talent pool. So this is one that a lot of multinationals, especially in the tech space, are excited about, because whereas before, for those immigration challenges, or if you think about just the cost that it usually requires to relocate someone from one part of the world to another and sort of uproot everything, it's very costly. It's also disruptive for the individual as well. Now, could be an interesting experience, but for a lot of people, they might not have that interest. So from an organizational standpoint, being able to locate the best person for the job without necessarily having the constraint of a geographic location. Keep in mind, there's time zones and things that probably there's a practical element there, but that's a really exciting development for a lot of organizations. And for you, if you're an entrepreneur or if you have a business already, probably opens up some doors that you wouldn't necessarily have had otherwise as well. From a societal standpoint, there's also some great benefits. So if you think about rural areas, emerging countries or locations where brain drain is a big problem, primarily because people have felt the need to leave that location in order to access offices or companies or jobs that employment that they wouldn't have access to otherwise. That starts going away as long as the infrastructure is there from a technology standpoint to support that connectivity. And finally, there's probably a great benefit to sustainability. All of us saw those photos of the big cities where there were animals that were walking in the city streets as a result of that traffic not being there and the human footfall not being there as well. So that's not sustainable in its own way, but neither is the direction that we have been going, which is, spending 2 hours plus in a commute. I know a lot of my colleagues who live and work in Egypt or in Cairo in particular. That commute can be really debilitating and it eats away at your time and productivity. Why not spend that time with people that you like or doing productive things instead? There are some downsides though, or at least some areas of concern. And if you think about how we have felt over the last few months, it's probably been a more exaggerated version of what you would feel with an entirely remote or work from anywhere setup over an extended period of time. So that bond and connection that we have, the camaraderie, socialization, even things like mentorship, being able to learn through others just by observing, it's more challenging to do when you've got a remote work environment. Not to say that it's impossible, but it takes a new way of thinking and it takes a new way of looking at things in order to make sure that you get that, that same experience. Next is around innovation and problem solving. So impact to brainstorming, communication. I think we've all been in Zoom meetings that have gone over 3 hours long. Don't worry, this one is coming to a close fairly soon. But I've been in meetings where it's been, a 6-7 hour meeting over Zoom, and by the end of it, you're just exhausted. So it's not necessarily optimal in terms of a forum for brainstorming. We've got to cut them up into at least smaller pieces in order for it to be manageable. There's also some challenges when it comes to compensation, or at least, without going really deep into the HR technicalities of it. But if you think about tax liabilities or even just the philosophical question of let's say I work for a big multinational that has a big presence in San Francisco, like the Bay Area, where a lot of tech companies are based, or Seattle, where there's significant presence as well. I'm doing the same work as my peers there, exact same work, but I'm based in a location where cost of living is maybe lower. Does that necessarily mean that my compensation should be that significantly lower? So these are questions that have opened up from an HR perspective, and still a work in progress in some ways, but some of companies like ours and other tech companies I know have been looking at that. Mental health is definitely an area that I think we need to be conscious of. And again, the last few months have been extenuating circumstances, so not necessarily the norm, but it really shows what the extreme of it can do. A lot of us, I'm sure, have felt the impact of isolation, or if you're even not isolated, you're living with in a shared space with family, possibly with roommates or friends, or even a partner. You can feel that it's not healthy to be in the same space for an extended period of time, and isolation as an impact can also be really detrimental to all of us. So mental health is a big topic. From performance management perspective as well, and in terms of how this setup works, I created this image here because it's from a quote that you eat on the same table that you work on. And that's not really an ideal setup in terms of that boundary between your workplace and your personal life. So those lines can be blurring a little too much when you're working from anywhere. And it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes some of the support of your team members and coworkers as well to not take advantage of the fact that we have the ability to be online all the time. Finally, the last piece around concerns is in terms of data protection, data security, and regulations around that. So when you can work from practically anywhere, you just need to make sure that there is the infrastructure in place to be able to support the security and safety of IP or whatever other area you might be concerned about there as an organization. So this article here is the one that I was referencing. If you have a chance, you can jot it down. It says, it's called Our Work from Anywhere Future, and it was in HBR this month. As it relates to startups, this is a quote that I took away from that article that I thought was really pertinent to this audience, which is startup knowledge. Let me start again. Startup knowledge work companies, so not ones that involve a lot of manufacturing or a restaurant or something where it's a physical space, particularly in the tech sector, are well positioned to adopt a work from anywhere model from their inception. We found that lower real estate, utility, and other overhead costs may mean a higher valuation for the company if and when its founders exit the startup. So basically saying that you can use that cash for other purposes, and it can yield a higher valuation for the company as well, potentially. So have a read of that article if you're interested in this topic. One thing I did want to flag with you is that it's not all rosy. So the last few months, as I've mentioned, have indicated some of the potential pitfalls of working entirely remotely. And this, of course, comes with the other challenges that we've talked about. But it's really important as employers and organizations to remain close to their team members. That connection is really key. So people highlighted the lack of social interaction, isolation, loneliness, and just the increase in workload as all being reasons why this survey in Canada, which was just from a few weeks ago, highlighted that nearly half of Canadians want to quit their job, even if they foresee that the economy is going to improve. So that's a window into that world. I'll finish with a few key learnings that we've had And I had a good conversation with a lady named Mari Moynihan. She's our global head of talent acquisition for Dell Technologies, and has had some great insight into some of these things. So what have we learned as Dell? I think Anya shared some great ones. I'll add a few more. We know that we can work remotely and it can be much more effective than we thought. So that has really fast-tracked for us as an organization, our ability to have that flexibility in our workplace. The wider access to the talent that I mentioned is a big one. Lower real estate costs we've talked about. And there is opportunity to have better work-life balance if we come to this hybrid model that I think ultimately is the sweet spot that we'll land on. People are also more open to building relationships with new customers, potentially new employers that they may not have had before. So you can have meetings with net new customers that are starting from scratch. And I've been really impressed with, I support the sales organization at Dell, and we've had those scenarios come up where brand new relationships were built, and it's been a great surprise for us. However, in-person engagement is equally still relevant that it has been. We all crave that human interaction. That's not going to go away. And it's really important for those of you who do choose to have a virtual organization that you're leading, or a team that may be dispersed. Periodically, once things go back a little bit more to normal, to bring the team together, it makes a big difference as well, or even social things together as well. That makes a big difference. In terms of behavior, and I'll close on this, these are really the other things that we've taken away, which is agile mindsets make a huge difference. What does that mean? We've seen that we really had to make quick decisions and adapt very quickly, and so have our customers, whereas other people have struggled to do that. So the people who have that mindset of being able to be agile and adapt and be flexible are the ones who ultimately benefit most with this new world that we're living. The other piece around it is obviously people are less patient when they're online. So you need to get to the heart of issues more quickly, and get to the point. On that point, frequent communication is important. Empathy is really important to stay connected. And I know I started with this image. We go back to it in the same way that you can see the Champs-Élysées is too hectic in that bottom left-hand corner image and lacking energy in the top one. We need to find a balance for the workplace as well when it comes to this flexible work environment. So of Dell Technologies employees, 80% have said that they've got a preference to have this hybrid model of remote and in-person. And sometimes it takes a shock, like we had with this pandemic, to realize that the previous way that we're doing things isn't right, and it accelerates it for us. All right, that's it from my side, Hala.
We have some questions from the audience. We have one question: if someone doesn't have the option to work from no space or infrastructure, can you recommend other options for remote working? And another comment by Muhammad Abulaini saying, I enjoyed working from home model more than the traditional working from office. It's more convenient and productive. And some people said that the office is initially cost effective, but the distraction of working from home can cost as well. I leave this to you, Behshad.
Great points. Yeah, these are fantastic points. I think around the question of, if you don't have the option to work from home, one of the things that we are looking at as Dell is we recognize that as well. And the reality is that one size doesn't fit all. So in some countries, especially, some of the teams I support in areas and in countries where the infrastructure isn't there, their internet simply doesn't have the capability, or when large populations are working remotely, the power shuts off. It's just not sustainable. We as organizations still have that obligation then to provide them with options for a workspace that can support them to be productive. So really want to make sure that you're aware that it isn't really a one size fits all solution. And even us, we're really embracing it, are conscious of the fact that, we can't apply the same approach that we take in Dubai, for example, or in Amsterdam as we do in Nairobi or Lagos, where we've got significant teams as well. And that's what I would say, that there are solutions that are somewhere in between, like on-demand meeting spaces. And I think you're going to see an uptick in businesses that really look to welcome remote workers. This whole concept of being able to work from anywhere is going to end up being something that is a nice middle ground and a potential business opportunity as well.
We have a final question from Dinah. She's asking, which are the section processes? What are the section processes that you find most important remain or return to in-person interactions after the pandemic?
Oh, excellent question. So if I understood it correctly from Dinah, it's what are the practices that are going to help us rebuild some of those links once things get closer to the norm in terms of in-person interactions. I hope I interpreted that correctly, but this is actually something that we have been thinking about in terms of that balance between virtual teams and in-person teams. Look, I think the opportunity to get team members together in a way that is not putting people at risk, even in places where you can do it now in limited doses, is good. And we've seen that customers as well have started to reach out and want to connect in person where it's permissible. So I don't think it's radically different than what we were doing before, but we obviously have to respect the restrictions that are in place in each geography. I think you can do a lot of these things virtually as well. So I don't think, to answer your question, Dinah, it's not a world of difference than what we were doing before. It's maybe just a bit more phased so that you're easing into it. We've had some small team events at Dell as well, social distancing. And we've had big events where it's all virtual and people have their families with them, and virtual birthday party and things like that. And that's been equally great. So I don't think you need to overthink it.
I think that's it for today because we're running 1 minute over the time. Thank you, Behshad, for having us, and thank you for taking part in our summit. I know a lot of people joined the session and they're very grateful for all the tips. If you want to reach Behshad, make sure you find him on LinkedIn. And yeah, do you have any final comments or any final reflections?
Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I hope that the content I presented makes you think about the workplace a little bit differently and some of the decisions that you might need to make as entrepreneurs, or if you do work for a company as well as an employee. All that I think is going to be things to think about over the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next session.
Thanks, everyone.